Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome everyone to this afternoon's meeting of the Senate Committee on Legislative Operations and Elections. Thank you for your patience, members, and anyone watching. This week is committee passage deadline week tomorrow, and members may be going back and forth to other committees, presenting, voting. So I appreciate everyone's patience. We are starting a little bit late, and we will have to take account that some members may have to go and present other bills, including myself. Today, we have one bill set for hearing, Senate Bill 263. We are also going to have a work session on Senate Joint Resolution 7. Madam Secretary, we do have a quorum present. All our members are present. A brief explanation of the housekeeping items. If you are planning to speak today, please keep your device muted until it is your turn to speak or to present. Our legislative building is closed. All meetings are being held virtually, meaning committee members, staff, and presenters are participating either through the Zoom app or on the telephone. You can view committee meetings on the legislature's website or on the legislature's YouTube channel. As in previous sessions, all committee-related information is available on the NELIS, Nevada Electronic Legislative Information System, which is accessible on the Nevada Legislature's website. Currently, the public has 3 ways to submit public opinion, comments, testimony. Each way is slightly different. Some become part of the public record, other are opinions shared for legislators' information. The public can provide testimony via telephone during committee meetings, submit written testimony, or use the legislature's opinion poll application. To testify on bills or provide public comment during this session, members of the public should register on the NELIS system and then call in to the phone number that is provided. To register, you click on the Participate button under each meeting and fill out the requested information. After registering, you call the number provided at registration, and then you're placed in line to testify either in support, opposition, or neutral on the particular bill, or to provide public comment at the end of the hearing. Our broadcast and production services team will prompt you when it's your turn to speak. It's a first come, first serve option, and testimony may be limited. You can send in written testimony. Written testimony can be emailed as a PDF file to the following email address: senloe@sen.state.nv.us, or it can be sent via fax to the following fax number: 775-684-6500. Again, that's 775-684-6500. Written testimony should include the bill number, a clear title, such as testimony in support of a particular measure, and your name, and if you're with an organization, what organization you're with. All of these submissions will become public exhibits posted on the NELIS system for your and the public's consideration. They become part of the public record. Opinion poll. The legislature's opinion poll application has been used in prior sessions. This session is more prominently displayed and located in more places than before on the website. It's available by clicking on the Submit Opinion button near the date of each meeting. Through this feature, the public can provide comments or just indicate their position on a bill. The comments are only available to legislators and do not become part of the public record. For public comment, the committee will set aside a time at the end of today's meeting for people to call in. If you miss a meeting and want to know what happened, all committee meetings are recorded and posted on the legislature's website, usually by the following day. I know that was a lot of information, but if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact my office, any of our committee staff, and we'll certainly try to assist. Before we go to the bill hearing on Senate Bill 263, I'd like us to go to the work session on Senate Joint Resolution 7. Our committee policy analyst, Director Stewart, I'd like to turn it over to you, Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. For the record, Michael Stewart, committee policy analyst with the Legislative Counsel Bureau. Your bill on work session today, as the chair mentioned, is Senate Joint Resolution 7. We heard this on Tuesday, and it was brought to us by Senator Don Daraloop and Assemblyman Roberts. The Joint Resolution number 7 proposes to amend the Nevada Constitution to remove the constitutional provisions governing the Board of Regents of the University of Nevada. And the legislature shall provide by law for the governance of the university and the establishment of its various departments. In addition, the resolution stipulates that proceeds of public lands donated for the support of the institution shall be invested by the state of Nevada as required by law. And there are no amendments for consideration at this time. I would note that during the hearing on SGR 7, the Nevada Faculty Alliance did submit a proposed conceptual amendment. However, the bill sponsor has requested that the committee act on SGR 7 without that amendment. And I would note, like any joint resolution that is proposed to amend the Constitution by the legislature, it must be passed in identical form in 2 successive legislatures before it's sent to the voters for final approval. And thank you, Mr. Chair. That concludes SGR 7.
Thank you very much, Director Stewart. And I think I just have a quick question for either Director Stewart or Mr. Fernley. If SJR 7 passes the legislature this session and then were to pass at the 2023 session, would it be presented to the voters at the 2024 general election? Or I just kind of wondered if that could be clarified for the committee members.
Yes, Brian Fernley with the legal division. It would be, unless the legislature called a special election to consider it, it would be considered at the 2024 general election.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fernley. Members, are there any additional questions about Senate Joint Resolution 7? Senator Sievers-Gansert.
Thank you, Chair Orenshaw. So I'm looking at the language and it talks, because we're amending something, the Constitution that, of course, has been in place, for over 100 years. When the wording speaks to a state university which shall embrace departments of agriculture, mechanical arts, and mining, and other departments deemed appropriate for the state university. So it refers to state university, but then later it talks about state university and any other public institution of higher education established by the legislature. So state university, since the original university was the University of Nevada, what is now known as the University of Nevada, Reno, is it accurate to say that state university in this is the University of Nevada, Reno, and other public institutions of higher ed would be those that were developed after the original state university?
Well, and now I think the sponsor of the bill and I will both recall that seeing library books at UNLV with the stamp Nevada Southern University on them. I know even I have had to go to the old UNLV library and pulled out books that are stamped Nevada Southern University. So, but that's about as far as I can go in trying to answer that question. May I call on you, Mr. Fernley?
Thank you. I think the language as written is correct, because it would be the state university system, really, and then the other public institutions of higher education would probably generally refer to community colleges and state colleges and those types of entities.
Okay, so state university, you believe, includes the University of Nevada, Reno and UNLV because it was a subdivision originally of the University of Nevada, Reno? Or, I know what happens is when we do resolutions like this, you have to make sure you have the language right the first time or else you have to start over again, right? So I'm just double checking the language.
Yes, I think the language is correct in this one, and this does mirror the language from the AJR 5 in question 1 that was on the ballot in 2020.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Sievers-Gansert. Any additional questions, members? If not, I would open it up for a motion to pass on Senate Joint Resolution 7.
So moved, Chair.
I have a motion.
Sorry.
I have a motion, I believe, from Majority Leader Cannizzaro and a second from Vice Chair Lang.
Yes.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, not seeing any hands go up. Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Senator Lang. Senator Cannizzaro.
Yes.
Senator Sievers-Gansert.
Yes.
Senator Buck.
Yes.
Chair Orenshaw.
Yes. And I will assign the floor statement to Senator Dondero Loop. And I can be back up if for any reason you're not able to make that floor statement. Thank you very much, members.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. That closes our work session. And we will now open the hearing on Senate Bill 263.
Thank you, Chairman Orangeall and Committee on Lead Jobs. Good to be back in Lead Jobs. Served a few sessions, to say the least, with you guys in there. In that respect, Senate Bill 263 is what I've brought before you. As the representative for Senate District 17, I have the pleasure of representing all of Douglas, all of Lyon, all of Churchill, and all of Story County. Well, having 4 counties, there tends to be issues that come up in all elections that I'm asked from time to time from county clerks and various individuals to try to correct. The issues that came out in the last one that people objected to is one that's trying to be dealt with in this bill. It discusses the concept of canceling registration. We had a contentious Republican primary in Douglas County. We had a lot of people that switched parties because they wanted to participate, and that's a good thing. However, several individuals were upset because they had to cancel their voter registration in order to then reapply, and they didn't really like that concept. So the first part of the bill is going after that, stating that you don't have to cancel the registration. We can just, change it. The other aspect had to deal with some individuals we ran into within the military. The current system under our laws state that their application, or rather that the voter and application for military overseas ballots are accepted until the 7th day before an election, where we're in a situation where we allowed same-day voter registration. So it seems that we've kind of put our military at a, less advantageous position. So in that respect, we're seeking to try to correct this to instead cover the voters to apply to register to vote and cast military overseas ballots by the deadline for casting an absentee ballot that applies to a registered voter who is not what's called a covered voter. In that respect, though, I have to admit that when we put those changes in, we thought we had it right. And as usual, the Secretary of State's office contacted us and said that our sometimes concepts of verbiage was incorrect. And in that respect, you should have an amendment appropriately in front of you that is proposed amendment 3237 to Senate Bill 263. This incorporates the changes that the Secretary of State's office says are necessary to get the verbiage right, because evidently we did not have it right. In that respect, Chairman, if it is possible, if I could please have Mark from the Secretary of State's office address these changes and talk about it, I would be appreciative.
That's fine, and I believe the amendment should be posted on Nellis. Just to make sure everybody has it. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Orenshall. Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. Mark Lawson, Deputy Secretary of State for Elections for the record. First and foremost, to summarize the concepts, again, really the intent with the first part in regards to voter registration adjusts NRS 293.540, specifically subsection 2E. This part of the NRS requires a clerk registrar to cancel a voter registration, as the senator had mentioned, when they change their party affiliation. This is something that nowadays, frankly, can be done online already anyway, for those individuals who do it online as opposed to doing it in person in a clerk's office, which ultimately doesn't require the cancellation. So this is really a very much a cleanup item that will, a bit of a legacy requirement in the statute that no longer applies. So removing that part of the statute would update the statute and better reflect what's currently being done more appropriately. The second part that the senator discussed relates to the UOCAVA voters, which stands for Uniformed and Overseas Citizen Absentee Voting Act eligible registration voters. Those are the military and overseas citizens and the method that they vote. This intent is to update NRS 293D.230 so that those UOCAVA eligible voters, again, the military and overseas citizens, can also register all the way up to Election Day. Currently, the statute dictates they're not allowed to unless it's 7 days before the election. But again, as the senator mentioned, with same-day registration, it's a bit of a discrepancy that needs to be remedied. Those are ultimately the changes. We do not anticipate any sort of fiscal impact, and the Office of the Secretary of State is in support of this bill.
Thank you very much, Chief Deputy Secretary of State. And Senator Settlemyer, is there anyone else you'd like to help present, or should I turn it over to questions at this point?
Mr. Chairman, I'm ready for questions whenever you are, sir.
Thank you. Members, and I want to point everyone to the mock-up that's on Nellis, proposed amendment 3237 to Senate Bill 263. Members, are there any questions either for Senator Settlemyer or the Chief Deputy Secretary of State? Majority Leader Canizaro.
Thank you, Chair Orenshaw, and thank you, Senator Settlemeyer, here with us in Ledge Ops this afternoon. I just had a question and wanted to clarify if you've had a chance to discuss this, either you or the Secretary of State's office, with the county registrars and their ability to be able to process these on the correct timeline, if they're receiving them from overseas folks in the mail, and making sure that we can actually comply with what we're trying to do here, which I just wanted to see if there was any conversations with the registrars.
Thank you, Majority Leader. This is Senator Settlemeyer. I can only speak for the counties that I represent. I've talked to some of them. However, they are smaller, as we know. So it could be a question that we probably need to find out from Mr. Gloria whether or not it is permissible. But either way, to me, it comes down to a situation of equity for our military personnel and those individuals who are overseas. But in that respect, maybe the Secretary of State's office, Mark, could more appropriately answer it. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Mark Washington, Deputy Secretary of State for Elections, for the record. And thank you, Senator, for the question. Yes, absolutely. We have discussed it with the clerks. There is a bit of a concern in some of the larger counties, certainly, the ones that receive more of the UOCAVA votes. Certainly, but ultimately, again, as the Senator mentioned, it is about equity, and I think a current manning or staffing deficiency or even limitation shouldn't necessarily limit the ability of any of our citizens to vote from overseas. So I've talked to Mr. Gloria about it, and you exactly hit on the head what his concern was, a little bit about the timeline. Recognizing, though, that the current timeline that is in place allows that these ballots be processed not by necessarily the day of the election. There is a period of time so that while there would be delays and certainly a little bit of an impact to his staff, ultimately, again, in the sake of enabling military and overseas citizens to vote along the same timelines, it generally makes sense. Does that answer your question?
It does. And I guess I wanted to be clear that I guess from my standpoint, the issue is not necessarily whether or not we agree that military voters should have the same access. I agree with that principle wholeheartedly. It's just the feasibility of being able to actually comply with all of these provisions and make sure that that can actually be done is where my concern was. And my understanding was that there may have been a concern from some of the larger counties on being able to comply with all of those provisions.
And I just want to jump in. I do believe that Registrar Gloria is currently in front of the Assembly Committee on Legislative Operations and Elections that is meeting at the same time. And so he may be able to answer some questions about how this might affect Clark and some of the larger counties shortly. But the message I've gotten is that he's currently in front of our sister committee over in the Assembly. Members, any additional questions for either Senator Settlemeyer or the Chief Deputy Secretary of State? Senator Sievers-Ganser.
Thank you, Chair Orenshaw. So I was thinking there was an amendment to this. There's an amendment.
This is Senator Settlemeyer. It is Senate proposed amendment 3237 to Senate Bill 263. It is on Nellis. The changes, unfortunately, were just received momentarily. It does not incorporate any new concepts. It's just changes of wording that were necessary to make it in compliance with terminologies that I was unfamiliar with, considering that I had not voted from overseas.
Thank you, Senator Settlemeyer. And that should be on Nellis. Hopefully you've received a copy, Senator Sievers.
I'm not seeing it yet, but
You're not seeing there. Well, I will check with Mr. Stewart because I know that this.
You know what? It's under mock-up. I see it. It's not under exhibitor. It's under. I found it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And again, I do believe that we should be able to speak to Registrar Gloria if there are any questions. I'd certainly like to ask him how he feels this might affect Clark, and at least in terms of the more populous counties. But that may be a question we'll have to wait for a little bit. Senator Settlemeyer, then unless you have any other presenters, I'd like to turn it over to support.
No problem, Mr. Chair. Look forward to it.
Thank you very much. Broadcasting, if there's anyone who wishes to speak in support of Senate Bill 263 on the phone lines, we're allotting 2 minutes per caller.
Yes, Chair, the public testimony line is open and working. However, there are no callers in the lobby at this time.
Thank you very much, Broadcasting. If we can now look to opposition to Senate Bill 263, if you check the phone lines and see if there's anyone who wishes to speak in opposition, we're allotting 2 minutes per caller.
As Chair, the line is up and working. However, there are no callers in the lobby at this time.
Thank you very much, Broadcasting. Broadcasting, I wonder if you could now check the neutral position, if there's anyone in the queue who wishes to speak neutral on the measure.
Yes, Chair, the line is open and working. However, there are no public callers at this time.
Thank you very much, Broadcasting. And I know that Registrar Gloria may be joining us shortly, and I would like to ask him a few questions. But for now, I think I'd like to close the hearing on Senate Bill 263, and I can reopen it if he comes back. And I think we'll take a 5-minute recess.
Mr. Chairman, if it's acceptable, I'll probably leave Mark in order to try to address any concerns or issues. I've been requested to get over to other committees immediately. So with your indulgence, I will slip out in order to do that.
That's fine, Senator Settlemeyer. Thank you for presenting today.
Thank you, Chairman.
Health and Human Services, know you're ready.
And we'll take a brief recess. Right, I'd like to bring us back to order. Registrar Gloria, thank you so much for joining us. I know you were over in the assembly, and if you've had a chance to look at the mock-up to Senate Bill 263, it's posted on NELUS, but I know we've only received it a few hours ago, but I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it. But Registrar Gloria? Well, I thought we had our registrar, but
Chair, this is broadcast. He is in attendance in the meeting.
he is okay. Maybe perhaps he's distracted by something over in our sister committee. I'm sure we're more interesting than anything going on over there, but maybe he's gotten distracted by something happening over there.
Mr. Chairman, excuse me, can you hear me now?
Yes, Registrar Gloria, thank you so much for joining us. I know you're playing dueling committees today, and we just...
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you, Registrar Gloria. First of all, there's a proposed amendment 3237 to Senate Bill 263 that I received this morning. I know it's short notice, but have you had a chance to look it over?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I did get an opportunity to see that amendment.
Thank you. Well, one question I had is just wondered what the effect would be on a county like Clark or some of the other more populous counties on this passing in terms of the operations of the election.
The extension of the deadline for those overseas voters is definitely a good thing for that group of UOCAVA and overseas voters. We were concerned about running it late into the cycle all the way to election day, simply because on election night there are many responsibilities that staff are monitoring, including mail ballots and receiving the information from the polls. We were hoping that it might be possible to have that changed to Monday before the election. We wouldn't have any problem supporting it, but putting it all the way to election night, it does put a strain on staff.
Sorry, I had that on mute. So Registrar Gloria, then there's just a kind of a very small change to this amendment that would make it a little more workable for the Clark County Election Department?
Absolutely. The bill is a good move for providing more access to overseas, and since they've clearly outlined that it has to be the electronic format, we don't see any problem with supporting those voters through Monday. However, to election night does create a bit of a burden for us.
Thank you. I see a question from Majority Leader Canizaro.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Registrar Gloria, for being here. We appreciate it and recognize that it's difficult to try to be in two committees at the same time. So thanks for popping over. I wanted to ask just a quick question because there was another portion of this bill that had to do with the changing with the party cancellation piece of it. And I wanted to just confirm that there didn't seem to be any issues with that piece of it.
For the record, Joe Gloria, Registrar of Voters. Senator Canizaro, we do not see that. We simply see that as a cleanup in the language. That's not an issue for us.
We are now live for the broadcast. Okay, thank you so much. I would like to call this
Great, thank you.
to the Assembly Committee on Legislative Operations and Elections.
Chair?
Senator Sievers-Gansert.
Yeah, so I'm just going back to section 5, excuse me if I could. And so are you trying to say that we should change section 5, number 1, as far as A, where it's has to be postmarked the day on or before the day of the election, and that's the time frame that's hard for you to manage? Because B is electronic mail or facsimile. So is it just the mail receiving it?
Excuse me, Senator Joe Gloria, Registrar of Voters. The way that we read the bill, we saw the electronic request making it eligible to be laid into the evening on election night. The mail that's coming in can be received, but the actual request if it comes in on tonight, it does create a bit of an issue for us. We were hoping that that deadline could be pushed to Monday night for the receipt request, and we can easily transmit the ballot for them to process very quickly and get back to us on election day.
Thank you, Registrar Gloria. Any follow-up, Senator Sievers-Gansert?
Well, I'm just sort of thinking about, but now that we have same-day registration, and I don't want to put the veterans at a disadvantage. If a regular voter can electronically submit something and it be turned around so that they can vote, I just feel like we have to make sure that our veterans have the same standing and the same access.
And pardon me, Registrar Gloria, were you able to hear Senator Sievers-Gansert's question, or?
I apologize. I didn't hear that portion of what she had stated.
Oh, thank you. So kind of going back to the electronic mail or facsimile machine, I want to make sure our veterans have the same access and standing, since we have individuals who can walk in and register to vote and be able to vote. And I recognize, I would imagine that there's not going to be thousands of these, but we were able to handle sort of the same day registration. So I want to make sure, again, that they have the same standing and access as anyone else to be able to elect or to be able to participate.
Joe Gloria, Registrar of Voters, Clark County. That's an understandable argument, Senator. We're simply pointing out that we have staff late into the evening beginning to prepare for the receipt of all of the stuff coming in from the polling places. So perhaps if there was some clarity as to that cutoff being perhaps at 5 o'clock on election day, we might be able to work with that. But at 7 o'clock, we need to be prepared for everything coming back into the warehouse. It's difficult to allocate resources on that particular day. Understand your argument.
Thank you. I just want to make sure, I guess, that they have equal access. And so maybe I should circle back and ask you a little bit about the same day voter registration process. Can somebody get in line or register to vote at 6:55 p.m. on election day and be able to register and vote at that time?
Registrar of Voters, Joe Gloria, that is correct. Nevada ID, they get in line for SDR and get voted being in person.
Okay, so I'm not sure, how to approach this, whether there should be some sort of deadline for folks who are doing same-day registration to make sure they get turned around too. But I think our military should have the same access. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Gansert. Majority Leader Canizaro.
Thank you, Chair Orenshaw. And so when I think I heard you say the request, you're talking about the request to receive a ballot that you would need to have by either I know you mentioned Monday before election day. Potentially there would be some availability to do it on election day, but it's that request that you would need ahead of time in order to be able to process that and get out the ballot before the election is over.
Registrar of Voters, Joe Gloria, that is correct, Senator Canizaro. The technical aspect of sending that overseas or to somebody, we just want to make sure that they'll have the full opportunity to get that back to us electronically. So if we could make that request come in the day before, we're certain that we'd give them plenty of time to vote that ballot and get it back to us for processing.
Okay, and I appreciate that. That helps with a little bit of clarity, and I definitely agree that we want to do everything we can to make sure our military voters are on the same footing. I do just have some concerns with the ability to actually execute that if we are keeping it at election day and not giving some additional time for the turnaround to receive that request and then send out the ballots, which I think is a little bit of a different standpoint than someone who is able to do that in person, unfortunately. So thank you.
Thank you, Majority Leader. Thank you, Registrar Gloria. Senator Buck.
Thank you, Chair Orenshall. And I'd have to agree that we want to make sure that there is equity with that. I know that in being elected November 16th of 2020, that there was plenty of time for everyone else to, get their ballots in via mail. So I think we need to allow for that for our military. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Buck. And I had a little difficulty hearing you. Is there do you have a question, or I apologize, you broke up a little bit, or just statement?
Sorry, Chair Orenshall, just a statement.
Okay, perfect. No worries. I just want to make sure you didn't have a question there that I didn't hear. Right. Members, any additional questions either for the sponsor, Registrar Gloria, or our Chief Deputy Secretary of State? Right. I'm not seeing any additional questions, and thank you very much, Registrar Gloria, for joining us and helping us answer some questions today. Okay, I will now close the hearing on Senate Bill 263. We do have a public comment broadcasting. I'd like to open it up for public comment.
Yes, Chair, the line is open and working. However, there is no public comment at this time.
Thank you very much. With that, we are adjourned.